The story begins in Italy, where the Dalton family, Ben, Louise, and their 11-year-old daughter Agnes, are on vacation. Though they're in a beautiful resort, Ben and Louise find it hard to fully relax, only mingling with a Danish couple they find dull. Meanwhile, Agnes clings tightly to her stuffed rabbit, Hoppy, for comfort. But when Hoppy goes missing, Agnes is devastated. Luckily, the toy is found by a British couple, Patty and Sierra Feltz, who are there with their mute son, Ant. Unlike the Danish couple, Patty and Sierra quickly charm the Daltons, and the two families end up having lunch together, hitting it off. During lunch, Ben shares that his family recently moved to London for his job, which meant Louise had to give up her own career. Patty extends an invitation to the Daltons to visit their country estate. Back in London, Ben confides in Louise about a work deal that fell through and his worries over Agnes still relying on her stuffed animal for comfort. When a postcard from Patty and Sierra arrives, inviting them to the estate again, Ben is intrigued. Louise has reservations at first. They hardly know these people, but eventually they decide to go. The Daltons arrive at the Feltz estate just in time for dinner. Patty eagerly serves a roast goose, offering some to Louise despite her mentioning earlier that she's vegetarian. Louise, trying to be polite, takes a small bite but spits it out when no one is watching. Later that night, while Ben takes out the trash, Ant follows him silently and reveals a horrifying secret. His tongue has been cut out. Back inside, the adults continue chatting, while Ant and Agnes sleep in the same room. Louise hears Ant crying out in his sleep, but Patty and Sierra reassure her that he'll settle down soon. The next day, both families go hiking in the woods. As Agnes tries to make a swing, Patty forcefully moves Ant aside to make room for her. Later, Patty suggests a dip in a nearby lake after hearing Louise complain about neck pain. But the relaxing moment quickly turns uneasy as Louise confides her discomfort to Ben. That evening, Sierra invites the Daltons to dinner at a local restaurant while a babysitter watches Ant and Agnes. During dinner, Patty and Sierra talk openly about their vibrant sex life, making Ben uncomfortable when Louise casually mentions their own romantic struggles. The awkwardness escalates as Patty and Sierra joke around, pretending to perform oral sex under the table, leaving the Daltons bewildered and on edge. Meanwhile, Ant leads Agnes into a bedroom where he shows her a secret collection of watches hidden in a drawer. Among them, Agnes finds one with a Danish inscription, a clue that it once belonged to someone else. Ant urges her to keep quiet so that the babysitter, Mujid, won't find them. He's tricked Mujid into thinking they're playing hide-and-seek. He then reveals something more disturbing, his upper body covered in bruises and scars, hinting at a dark past. Later that night, Ben and Louise have an intense conversation. Ben is still upset about what Louise revealed to Patty and Sierra, and he brings up an old jealousy about seeing another man's photo on her phone. After discussing their issues, they hug and reconcile, unaware that Patty is secretly watching them from the shadows. In the middle of the night, Louise wakes up and checks on the kids, only to find Agnes and Ant missing. Panic sets in as she searches the house, eventually discovering Agnes asleep in bed next to Sierra. Louise carefully carries Agnes back to her room, unnerved by what she's seen. The next morning, Louise tells Ben that finding Agnes in Patty and Sierra's room was the last straw. She insists that they need to leave immediately. The Daltons try to sneak out while Patty and Sierra are still asleep. But as they drive away, Agnes suddenly panics. She's left Hoppy behind. Ben tries to convince her to forget about the stuffed rabbit, but she kicks his seat in frustration, causing the car to nearly crash into a truck. With no other choice, Ben turns back to retrieve Hoppy. When they return to the house, Patty and Sierra are already awake and seem offended by their attempt to leave without saying goodbye. Louise explains her discomfort with what happened the night before, and Sierra apologizes, sharing a tragic story about their lost daughter, Mary, which softens the Daltons' resolve. Feeling sympathy, Ben and Louise apologize for their hasty departure. Later, Patty invites Ben on a fox hunting trip, while Louise stays behind with Sierra and the kids. During this time, Ant attempts to write a message for Agnes, but it's in Danish, so she can't read it. Before Sierra notices, Ant swallows the note, keeping its message a secret. Out in the woods, Ben struggles to shoot a fox, and Patty suggests they release their frustrations by letting out primal screams in an open field. It's a strange and unnerving moment, but Ben reluctantly plays along. Back at the house, tensions flare over lunch when Sierra criticizes Agnes's eating habits, upsetting Louise. Though Sierra offers an apology, Patty insists that Louise should apologize too, escalating the tension. Later, Agnes and Aunt perform a dance they've been practicing to Cotton Eye Joe, but Patty's harsh criticism of Aunt's dancing frightens Agnes. While Patty takes a nap, Aunt secretly steals his keys and leads Agnes to a secluded barn with a hidden basement. Inside the basement, Aunt shows Agnes a horrifying discovery, a book filled with photographs of other families Patty and Sierra have encountered. Each family photo shows a child looking increasingly unhappy, and with each new family, the child from the previous picture is replaced by a new one, hinting at a sinister pattern that Agnes and the Daltons have unwittingly become a part of. Aunt reveals the horrifying truth to Agnes. Patty and Sierra cut out his tongue and plan to make Agnes their next child after killing her parents, just as they did to his. Panicked, Agnes snaps photos of the evidence on her phone and runs to show Louise. Meanwhile, Patty wakes up and catches Aunt trying to return the keys, noticing that the basement latch has been left open. Once Ben and Louise learn the truth, they try to stay calm and think of a way to leave. They tell Patty and Sierra that Agnes just got her first period as an excuse to depart. But just as they're about to leave, they discover their car has a flat tire. Patty offers to help change it, but then Agnes realizes that her beloved stuffed rabbit, Hoppy, is missing again. Patty points out that Hoppy is in the gutters, so Ben climbs a ladder to retrieve it. Despite the rabbit being shredded, Agnes insists they get out of there. The Daltons try to get Aunt to open the gate so he can escape with them, but Patty unlocks it with his own keys. As they start to drive away, Agnes looks back and sees Patty throwing Aunt into the lake. Ben rushes to save him while Louise tries to flee with Agnes, but Patty shuts the gate, trapping them inside. Ben manages to rescue Aunt, but Patty and Sierra corner Louise and Agnes at gunpoint. They demand all of the Daltons' money, and Patty attempts to drug Agnes with ketamine. But Louise fights back, using a hidden box cutter to slash Patty's face, then grapples with Sierra over the rifle. Amid the chaos, Ben frees himself, Agnes, and Aunt, and they make a run for it. Just then, Patty and Sierra's accomplice, Mike, arrives and begins shooting at them, forcing the family to hide inside the house. The villains start hunting them as Ben and Louise desperately try to keep the kids safe, barricading themselves in a bedroom. Ben attempts to set the barn on fire using one of Patty's liquor bottles to attract attention, but the flames miss and instead set Patty's car ablaze. Mike shoots at them and tries to break into the house. A brutal struggle ensues between Ben and Mike, leaving Ben with his head driven into broken glass. At the last second, Louise grabs the hammer and drives it into Mike's head, killing him. When Patty attacks, Louise retaliates by spraying drain cleaner into his face, burning him severely until Sierra intervenes to help him. The family tries to escape over the roof, using a ladder to climb down, but Sierra catches up, and Louise strikes her over the head, causing Sierra to fall from the roof to her death, knocking the ladder down with her. Ben manages to climb down, injuring his leg, but sets the ladder back up for Louise, Agnes, and Aunt. Just then, Patty appears and holds Agnes at gunpoint, declaring that he will take her now that Sierra is dead. He threatens to kill her parents, but Agnes bravely stabs him in the abdomen with the ketamine needle, incapacitating him. Before leaving, Aunt grabs a large brick. In his last moments, Patty tries to express pride in Aunt, only for Aunt to strike him with the brick, smashing his skull in a fit of rage. With the danger finally behind them, Ben and Louise gather Aunt and Agnes into Mike's car and speed away from the estate for good. As they drive off, Agnes hands Hoppy to Aunt, offering him a small comfort amidst the horror they've survived.